How much money did you pay in taxes last year? In the US, the federal tax bracket ranges from 10% to 37%. So, who gets to pay 10% and who gets to pay 37%? Let's take someone like Jeff Bezos. Insane amounts of money, right? That's kind of what he's known for. But do you want to guess how much he pays in taxes? Don't shoot the messenger. But from 2014 to 2018, he paid less than 1% of his income. And get this, in 2011, he paid zero federal tax, zilch. In fact, the government gave him $4,000 as a tax credit for his kids. And he's not alone. Warren Buffett, you know, the famous investment whiz? Well, turns out he's also pretty good at avoiding the IRS. His tax rate from 2014 to 2018 was just 0.1%. So how do they do it? Well, let me show you how. These big shots hold onto their money so that way, when you become mega rich, you'll know exactly what to do. Tip number 1: get paid next to nothing. Hear me out, here's what I mean. Jeff Bezos has a salary of just $80,000 a year. Mark Zuckerberg's salary? Well, that's just $1 a year. What about Elon Musk? Well, the state of California actually had to remind Elon that he was legally required to pay himself at least minimum wage. What's going on here? These guys are all supposed to be smart. Why are they paying themselves so little? Here's why. Because the federal income tax, as the name implies, only applies to your income, your salary and wages. That's because the government taxes you for work, not wealth. Sure, Bezos and Musk billionaires. But according to tax law, their wealth can't be touched. It's only the money coming into your pockets that the IRS sees. So, if you want to avoid paying taxes, just give yourself a laughably small salary. But wait, I know what you're thinking. How can I live a billionaire lifestyle with a minimum wage? Doesn't it seem a little bit crazy to earn nothing just to avoid taxes? Well, that brings me on to step number 2: just borrow. Now, look, we've all got that friend in our lives who's always out of cash and can never pick up the tab. But this is different. After all, you've got the wealth. It's just that you don't have the salary. Your money just so happens to take the form of things like cars and houses. And that's how the bank sees you when you walk through their doors, regardless of what your official salary is. If you've got assets, let's say you've got a super yacht worth hundreds of millions of dollars or millions of dollars worth of stocks. Maybe you've got a mansion up in the hills. Well, guess what? Those bankers are going to welcome you in with open arms. And you know what the best thing is about borrowing? It's not taxed. Think of it like this. If you have to sell one of your houses, your cars, your watches in order to make some cash, well, unlucky for you, you're likely to get hit with something called capital gains tax. Anytime you make a profit from selling an asset that's a car, a house, even stocks, you have to pay capital gains tax, and that ranges from 20% to 37% for making a profit. Ouch. That's got to hurt. So, instead of selling and actually realizing profit, borrow against that asset because the borrowing comes in the form of debt, you pay zero tax on it, and you still get to keep the asset to win-win. And that leads me on to my next tip: hide your money. Look, people have been hiding their money for centuries. Just look at any pirate movie. But things have got a little bit more sophisticated over the years. It's no longer just pirates who do it. Everyone from Bono to Russian oligarchs, even Queen Elizabeth II, have all used this strategy. Here's what you do. First, you need to find a place to park your money where taxes are extremely low or non-existent. That comes in the form of a tiny little island somewhere known as an offshore tax shelter. Here, write them down. Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, the Seychelles, Jersey. Those are some of the most popular tax-friendly places that have been around for years. In fact, according to some estimates, up to 10% of the world's GDP is being held in these types of places. That's about $5.6 trillion. And tax shelters don't have to be offshore these days. More and more of them are popping up all over the world, many in places you might not expect, like Jackson, Wyoming, for example. This little western town is home to plenty of cowboy hats and upscale boutiques. But it's also home to quite a bit of billionaire money. To give you an idea, the state of Wyoming, the least populated state in the entire US, has about $31.5 billion tied up in some kind of trust. What's a trust, you might ask? You're going to want to make note, because this is key. A trust is essentially a company whose sole purpose is to manage your money and assets. When you put your money into a trust, you basically give up ownership of it, leaving it to the trustee to manage it on your behalf. Now, the beauty of a trust is that it's secret, and it's safe. If you've got an ex-spouse or a creditor who's trying to get money from you, they can't, because, technically, you've given your money to someone else. The trust you don't own that money anymore. It's being looked after by the trustees. So, who are the trustees? Well, here's the beauty of it. Trustees can be professional advisors, acting in your best interests. Or in some places like Wyoming, you can even set up another company to manage your trust, and that company can be run by you. Or your family, kind of like Russian nesting dolls. Each layer is a little more secure. Now, this is where things get murky in terms of the law. With so much secrecy baked into the structure of trusts, it's hard to say whether the money they hold is coming from legitimate or illegitimate sources. Some trusts are so secret, the government has no clue how much money is actually in them. And that's why the list of people using these sorts of places may look a little bit unusual side by side with the rich and the famous. We're talking TV stars, actors, musicians. You'll often find shady oligarchs, ruthless dictators, and lots of the criminal underworld. But don't let that put you off. If done correctly, trusts are completely legal. And as for the taxes, whatever you put into the trust is going to be taxed very little. Especially in a place like Wyoming, where tax rates are already extremely low. It might sound surprising, but low tax places like Wyoming or Bermuda are actually a deliberate strategy. Lawmakers pass tax-friendly laws in order to attract businesses into the area. And that brings us on to the final step for lowering your taxes: change the rules. Now, you might not be able to change the rules yourself, but with enough money and influence, you can certainly make sure that the policymakers think of you when it comes time to pass tax laws. That, my friend, is called lobbying. And there's a reason why. It's a favorite strategy for giant corporations and billionaires alike. In fact, year after year, taxes usually take the number 2 or 3 spots in the list of most lobbied issues in Congress. There are well over 10,000 professional lobbyists in Washington working for everyone from ExxonMobil to the Girl Scouts of America. And there's a reason why they're all at it, because it's a very effective strategy. In Wyoming alone, lawmakers have made more than 100 changes to the law regulating trusts in just the past 3 decades. Those changes have helped to create every friendly environment for the ultra-wealthy. How exactly do the lobbyists change laws? Well, the methods vary. They throw parties, they host fundraisers. For politicians, they make it very, very clear what they want to see. And just like tax shelters, lobbying can be perfectly legitimate, or it can look a lot like corruption. When Jack Abramoff admitted to spending over $1 million a year on special gifts for members of Congress, it definitely gave the profession a bad name. But fortunately for you, many politicians don't need much a nudge to embrace lower taxes. In places like Wyoming, lower taxes are seen as a way to bring in more business and therefore attract more jobs, which means often it's just as much the politicians who seek out the billionaires as the other way around. And that's definitely something that works in your favor. So, there you have it, 4 ways to pay a lot less taxes. And by the way, while some people are using islands to stash their money, others are buying islands. Check out this video next to find some islands you might like to buy.